So to preempt the obvious questions, there's going to be fix packs coming for 2.4 because that happens. There's going to be another version. We're not sure what it's going to be called yet. We're not sure when it'll come out. That should cover all the questions.
We already decided yesterday, can't you remember?
Oh, right.
So
it was a long night.
I've been pushing for 3.0 since I get to break things. Yay. Whereas everyone else doesn't want me to break things. So
please break things.
Oh, brilliant, thanks. So maybe the future will be that during the summer or spring, half a year from now, we'll release 2.5. We'll not have that many new features, incremental fixes, things that, for example, take some of the functionality that used to be in the Plus plugins. Everyone knows Plus plugins, right? And move that into the actual core of OpenToolkit, or then we'll just release those as separate libraries or plugins in OT terminology. And then a year from now, maybe we'll go for 3.0, hopefully. Some background, we were going to originally release 3.0 yesterday, but at some point Roger decided, yeah, you didn't decide, you decided to suggest that maybe we shouldn't, because I ran out of time because of chunking, because I didn't have enough time to implement the map first and other processing I wanted to get into 3.0 that would warrant a major version pump. So that's why we have 2.4 right now, and then maybe we'll go for 2.5 with new features, but nothing that should break your existing stuff, and then later on go for I don't know, OpenToolkit 3000. I would really like to keep the semantic versioning. Like, if the first number changes, then it breaks your compatibility. If the first, yeah, if the first number remains the same, it should be compatible with the old one. That really doesn't apply to OpenToolkit. We've had few versioning system version number schemes, and none of those was consistent in its promises. It would be really nice to achieve that, but maybe in OpenToolkit 4000.
Do any of you, are there people here who do know what the Plus plugins are? Anybody use them? I figured a bunch of people would know, but does anybody use them? That was a set of plugins created by Deborah Pickett years ago, posted to the DITA users group at Yahoo, so they're available there. They don't work with any recent version of the toolkit. I mean, they were built for 1.4 something, I think, originally.
It has nothing to do with the mold flow name.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, they are, by this point, somewhat moldy. One of the features that I found really exciting in there, that's been there, was the ability to generate syntax diagrams using SVG. Now, maybe IBM's almost the only company that uses the syntax diagram markup, but I know there are a few others, but not many. One of the reasons probably that no one uses it is because the few who've tried published and got garbage output. We've used an ancient C++ generator to turn them into railroad diagrams for years. But over the last few months, I've taken those Plus plugins, torn them apart so that the SVG code could be used independently, which was never the case before, and made it into a separate pre-processing module so that it can be used for HTML, HTML5, XHTML, PDF. You can have the same SVG diagrams in your PDF. And it took longer than I had hoped to do all of that. But just this past week, the IBM lawyers finally said, yes, all of this new work you've done to change this, put it back out there. So it's going to be out there. Not sure when. I'm still doing some tidying up, but it shouldn't be too long. And if we have a 2.5, it will presumably be connected in some way. It will certainly at least be usable. Maybe that they go out first as just a plugin that you can drop into 2.3, 2.4. Yay! I should have mentioned that earlier. I might have if my laptop had connected to the screen, because I had some stuff up that I could have shown, but alas.
They are really pretty. I've seen them. Really pretty.
Certainly when compared to the garbage you get today, that doesn't look anything like a diagram.
I think I'm allowed to say Oracle also uses that markup, and they have their own crufty code that generates what's in the SQL manuals. I'm sure they would love to have a replacement for that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. When I was going with the lawyers, as part of my defense, I had to figure out, all of this is public stuff that, we didn't even write this diagram. I had to get permission to use the SVG generator code. And then it's like, okay, so how public is information about IBM syntax diagrams in general? And if you Google like IBM syntax diagrams, you get, as the top results, like 100 different pages across IBM products. Here's a long, detailed explanation of how to read our syntax diagrams. Yeah, they're not, it's good at what it does, and it is necessary, but they're not pretty things. That's another reason that most people haven't used them. Yes, they are very quiet. I think maybe they're afraid of us. Yeah, maybe we should stop looking at our shoes. Any other questions?
Or opinions?
Or opinions? Commentary? Has this been useful? Oh, thank goodness somebody spoke up on that. That would have been a bad way to end the day. Chirp, chirp. Yes?
Where do you see certain enterprise features like load balancing or web service or other kind of multiprocessing architecture coming into the long-term roadmap for the product?
With the new developers that come in to help implement it?
So would it be interesting to have, say, carrying on from the previous discussion, maybe those features are, you pay for them?
Sure.
Sponsored development would also be a wonderful thing. I know Jarno's itching to work on a DITA-OT server project.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that from 2 years ago, and
Yep.
so I started writing a business plan.
Yeah.
Well, started writing a business plan for it. It was 2 years ago, because you said it in an offhand comment in 14. Somebody ought to come up with, the Open Toolkit service.
Well, last year Jarno demoed what he had.
And then he demoed it last year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I trust you.
Yeah. But so I was thinking that maybe you could have, I was just chatting about this with somebody else, but you could have as a core what's there now and enterprise features that could be charged.
It's sort of a tad out of scope. The Unix philosophy is that you do a tool that does one thing, only that one thing, and hopefully it actually does it well and it's fast. Open Toolkit is not a Unix tool. It does multiple things.
Does some of them well and some of them
Okay,
fast.
does them some well and some of them fast, and then there are those other things. So it's really a huge canon to use to massage your content into something else. But to sort of have us directly inside the Open Toolkit project to come up with a server that does it for you in cloud, that's hosted by a company, or you host it yourself, that's a bit of an out of scope thing. So preferably I'd like to make the toolkit something that's easy to integrate into that sort of environment. And then you can just take your developers who are seasoned full stack developers and into DevOps, and have those people create some sort of environment where that tool is used in the way you need it to work. Whether you know that your content will create memory issues, then you will create a system that goes around that. If you know that you're going to be transforming single topics all the time and you can't wait for a minute, then you create a system that does it that way. But I think it should be a separate project, and the Open Toolkit project shouldn't, not the project, the tool or the product, shouldn't make it difficult to create a system like that.
So just curious, it's a kind of controversial question, but today a couple of times you mentioned that some technical solutions in DITA-OT are, let's say, not perfect, and you would like to...
Chunking.
Okay. And if we talk about 3.x or 4.x, have you thought about just breaking backward compatibility and, well, rewrite it from scratch? So we have examples like Python 2.7 and 3.0, or like most recent that Angular and Angular 2.
Well, we all know what happened to Python. Well,
I don't know.
Okay. People were not happy about it, but then people moved on. So initially it was an issue, but now the Python community has moved on. Yeah, and still moving. But and with Angular, Angular 2 is, according to many people, a lot better when they migrated to TypeScript and changed the way they do things. And it's still not the best product out there, but the community was able to move on, and it got some new users from doing that. It's just that a rewrite requires time, which we don't have. And even if each and every one of you goes back to your company, they hire a developer, and we get, what, 70 developers. Just throwing warm bodies at a project doesn't make it work. So breaking backwards compatibility is something I'd really like to do, because whenever I find myself in a situation where I'm actually sort of allowed to work on DITA during in my day job, because I don't normally do that, I find extending OT hideously annoying in some cases, and I would really like to rewrite those bits that annoy me, but I can't because of the backwards compatibility issues, and the more we break, the more people are just holding on to their 1.x and not going to upgrade ever. So,
I expect many of you have seen it, but many of you have not. I gave a session I think it was at DITA North America this year, about breaking compatibility and why it's a good thing and why you shouldn't be scared, because there's a lot of pushback on breaking compatibility. And some of you may have heard Jetpack references throughout the day. That's where that reference comes from, is that particular presentation. So if you haven't seen it, you can look it up or find me, or there's links to it.
So it would be really nice if we were in a situation where we could break things and automatically, by magic, have people's existing code work, but just doesn't work like that with the current setup we have.
But what about this idea in the end with the resolve data kind of thing? You know, that if you create a new processor with a new architecture, and then you keep the old processors and just feed them, you know, the result thing or something like that.
That's sort of part of the it moves Open Toolkit towards the Unix philosophy, that you have the tool that does the resolve data bit, and then what comes out is equivalent to DOM tags, and then you render those tags into HTML, which is again DOM tags, and in the end a person reads that and they become information. So that's one option, definitely, but
it still has many of the same issues, though, because moving there at this point, takes a lot of development work, takes a general strategy change, and will break all the existing plugins. So we could do that, and then you have this processor going forward, but the old plugins that we're trying to let you keep using aren't set up for that. I mean, they're going to get those duplicate links, like you mentioned. So it still requires work to make that happen.
Just disable link generation.
Yeah.
You don't get duplicates.
That's not the only thing. That's one example, but yeah, there's probably others.
But in the end, no one cares about the pre-processing part. No one cares about the normalized data or the resolved data. In the end, all they want is the PDF that they show their customers. And that's where people spend money on to get their own customizations working. The way we currently, out of the box, handle PDFs using XSL FO is not optimal, and XSL as a technology is sort of not completely abandoned because we still have implementations, but there will not be new versions of XSL, and the rest of the world has moved on over to CSS, so we sort of have to start from scratch because CSS doesn't give you all the things that FO gives you. It was probably the same when FO came about and DISL was already a thing, and it probably had more features. But it might be a good idea to just say, yeah, XSL, let's just move over to CSS. And that way we will sort of go around the problem of breaking things. We'll just abandon it. But even though I don't have any requirement to support anyone's plugins, I still feel somewhat obligated, and I can't just abandon people or companies.
You should clarify that XSL is XSL FO.
Yeah, XSL FO, not XSL T.
This might be a good time to sort of a little mean-spirited to say the people pushing back on don't break backwards compatibility are these people who are contributing, but that's all I was.
Yeah.
I was just going to put myself forward as a counter to the don't care about pre-processing. A lot of the customization I do can only be done in pre-processing because I'm doing things like synthesizing map components or adjusting copy to or doing things with keys that will affect the output. And that the best place to do that is in pre-processing. And if I had to defer it to the final form, it would be more work because I'd have to do the same thing in multiple places. So while most of the time pre-processing, yes, can be a black box, it can't always be a black box.
Wait a minute. If the pre-processing has an output, then can't you just do it on the output after the pre-processing?
No,
So
because
repeat the question there.
yeah, repeat that.
Okay, so if pre-processing has this normalized, this rational data output, then can't you do all this modification that you would have done in the pre-processing at that point? It seems to me that in systems that I've worked with or worked on before, there was always kind of a line where you kind of wanted to say, don't expose this to people because it's not the right place to expose modifications and give people a very clear interface where they can have these modifications. It seems to me that the line at pre-processing is an obvious choice for that.
I think in some cases that is correct, and that's what I've tried to do with many of my extensions. I used to hack apart bits of the pre-process all over the place, and in many cases I have been able to replace that so that effectively I have pre-process, Robert's pre-process, final output. But it doesn't work in every case, and I suspect Elliot's about to explain one that doesn't.
Yeah, so for example, if we look at George's model for pre-processing, by the time that's done, all the information about keys is gone.
Yeah.
But the pre-processing that I need to do depends on knowledge of the keys, for example.
Yeah, and that's the problem, that DITA doesn't support any kind of annotations. because you can just push that information in the results output as annotations, for instance, right? I mean, the DITA Open Toolkit already has that XTRF or XTRC attributes, but they may break that DITA content, basically. It's not really...
So, I mean, another pre-processing I do that happens during map processing is either synthesizing or sorting a glossary list, right? I'm actually sorting the list of topic refs so that the downstream processes just get a sorted list of topic refs and don't know that it had been sorted in the past, right? That's processing I could do in the final form, but if I do it earlier, then everybody gets it.
Yeah, but you can still have the pre-process generate DITA 1.0 stuff, and then you just reorder the map or rewrite everything in the way you want it to appear before your transformation types actually get hold of it. So if you need the key information, then either you're abusing keys to do something that they're not supposed to do, so you're trying to use DITA content in a way that's not compatible per spec, provided that the Open Toolkit does the right thing with keys. Don't know, we'd need to discuss the details, but I personally feel that it would be a suitable approach that we define what the DITA-OT core, DITA-OT pre-process, what it produces, and if you want to synthesize topics, you can do that later on. You just need to put your fingers into your ears and just rely on the fact that it looks like DITA 1.0.
You know, just kind of a final thought from my point of view is just, you know, there are always compromises, there are always trade-offs. And I think that two criteria you have to look at are, one is their data loss, right? I mean, so I guess you're worried about a loss of semantic value in having these key refs and you want to deal with them while you still have the semantic value. So if there's data loss, and that's an issue, and maybe you need to look for a way to solve that issue and push it out to the boundary so that you don't have to go inside the boundary to get it. The other thing is convenience, and maybe you're going to give up on convenience in order to maintain this boundary. But I think in the long run, having a solid boundary is more convenient. My personal opinion.
I like that opinion.
And I just want to add that, you know, the translation is broken, so you still need a result thing to go to Spanish and publish, right? So
right now the pre-processing has few configuration properties that you can, for example, disable conref processing or disable chunking, and then it'll just run through pre-processing without doing that specific bit. We would just need to also formalize what things can you disable in the processing, and if you disable it, what comes out. Then it's not DITA 1.0 compatible anymore, because now it still has code refs, so then you can choose, and then you can re-implement the things the way you want to. But it's sort of one of the things that has led to this discussion is that Open Toolkit is a tool that has existed for a while, and for example, Elliot has been working on it for the same amount of time it's lived, and because we have no way of saying you can't extend this, you can't modify it, we can't mark anything as private in ANT or in XSLT, Elliot has been able to modify those things where the Open Toolkit didn't work as expected, or it was lacking in some other fashion. So he's been able to work around the issues that we've had. And now he has an intricate system that works with the current Open Toolkit, and hopefully we'll be able to develop for example, pre-processing in a way that doesn't break his stuff. Elliot is special. He has more custom code than probably anyone else out there.
Well, that's right. But I mean, actually, it's the fact that I have custom pre-processing that doesn't work with the current toolkit. It works with 185, and what I've done, hopefully I don't need to do because you've changed the pre-processing, but I don't know yet because I haven't had time to look. Yeah, so I mean, I'm special, but I also don't represent myself. I represent a set of clients who have all used the things that I built, right?
Sorry to change the subject. We've gotten kind of off track. I mean, spending a long time on this one thing. I'd like to point out that you should admire Roger's dedication. You know, he's not answering this, but he's so dedicated. He's been up here working on DITA-OT docs with his paper and pen. So that is dedication.
I'm sorry I don't have a very witty response to that, but I just would like to point out that, I mean, we do need help with the docs as well, and I called out Shane earlier as I was speaking. Chris has done a lot of work on that as well, and both Chris and I would really appreciate assistance there if people have feedback and things. We'll be talking about that some more tomorrow, and Chris and I were... This microphone is sliding away again. We're thinking of meeting up tomorrow, maybe over lunch or something like that. So if any of you are around at the conference tomorrow and would be interested in helping us out with the documentation, please consider joining us for lunch. Look us up and let us know.
And I expect a lot of you around for the next couple of days. If you see me around, feel free to come talk. I might be more scared, again, than you are. Today, a couple of people tried to approach me when I was actually Skyping with my kids. That's probably the only time I'll just wave you off and seem kind of rude, but otherwise, it should be fine.
On the documentation, I just want to thank, as a user of the documentation, I want to thank Roger and Chris and the work that you guys have done over the last couple of years. Documentation has improved so much. Yeah. It's definitely made my life a lot easier.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people don't get the wrong impression. I mean, just because I'm the one that's sitting up here on this bench, the work that I do stands on the shoulders of the people that came before me. The person that immediately preceded me doing most of the work was Chris, and then there were others that preceded her as well. So we've inherited a lot of stuff, and I've had private conversations with Chris in which we've both admitted to one another that we were perhaps unnecessarily in some sort of deference to what we found, thinking, okay, this was probably right, let's leave it this way, and then we'll fix other things later and new things. So it takes a while to sort of, once you've been working with the code base for a while, to really understand what's this way because it's right, and what's this way because no one has sort of noticed that it's wrong. I beg for patience as well. I've been on this for 2 years now, since Jarno sort of surreptitiously asked me at some point if I would help him with some release notes. And I told you. I did that, and then he handed me the keys to the car and said, "You're driving now." It's taken me a while to get up to speed, but I'm glad to hear that you think we're at least driving in the right direction. But I get sleepy sometimes, and my dad had a horrible accident when he fell asleep at the wheel. I don't want to do that, so get in the car and help me drive and help me stay awake.
So we are close to the
I think we're pretty much at the time where they're going to kick us out. About a minute, yeah. We got time for a few more questions then. But it doesn't look like there are any, so I think we might be good, George.
We need to continue like tomorrow and the day after, if you're staying.
Yeah, please ask questions. And please also thank George for setting this up 3 years in a row, because this is incredible.
So thank you all for participating, and especially also for Jarno, Robert and Roger and Chris and everyone. And I want to thank again to our sponsors, supporters. Again, they just wanted to get involved, so I'm really happy to have them on board. Ixiasoft, Antenna House, Icarus, Comtech, and Gnostics. So thank you. And DITA Europe will be, from what I heard, in Berlin next year. So maybe we'll have DITA-OT in Berlin. DITA-OT Day. So thank you again, and for participating and staying, like it's Sunday evening and we have a full room of people. So you definitely are interested, and hope we will be able to have a 4th edition of DITA-OT Day next year. Thank you.